Greetings gamers, Tim Kirk here again, and yes, I'm wearing the same shirt as the last video. I have like 4 of these gray shirts, but I'm actually filming this video just about 10 minutes after the other one because I needed to take a break and wanted to get more than one video made so that I'm not always constantly behind in this process. Now, I want to talk today, or now, about game updates. That is, games that prevent new editions and games that do errata. Now, in my opinion, an errata is a very important piece of information that one publishes to correct things that slip through the editing and or writing cracks, to correct errors in the process of the game. Now, sometimes that's not a big deal. It's a slight change, it was just not worded right. Other times you have games with big, huge document piles of information that are basically almost whole new books to themselves. Then there are games that update certain information, make some certain changes, and they either do a revised edition or a second, third, whatever number they're at edition. And in some cases the changes are minor. In some cases the changes are significant. For example, for many years, Call of Cthulhu has been a game in which you can pretty much pick up an edition and use it and be just fine if you're using materials for other editions, because the games are nearly identical. There's tiny tweaks, but nothing so significant that you're really going to need a conversion document to make use of the other materials. Then there are games that seem to want to completely revise the game process from edition to edition. Now, D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, did not start out as one of these games. It started out as a game, from 1st to 2nd edition, to take some ideas that had been implemented in later support books for 1st edition, include them in core, and streamline the process. That is, proficiencies and non-weapon proficiencies were something that were added in later 1st edition that was adapted for 2nd edition when 2nd edition was done. Now, but then the change from 2nd to 3rd edition was more significant. It completely revised the way skills were done. It completely revised how saves were done. It completely revised how leveling was done. It revised a lot of magical spells and added some new tweaks on classes, returning classes that had been cut out in 2nd edition, such as the Barbarian, and adding a new class such as the Sorcerer, which in my opinion is not necessary. I don't much care for the Sorcerer or the Barbarian as character classes because I like them to be more archetypical. That is, a warrior is a warrior, a fighter, they're the same thing, and a barbarian is just a kind of fighter or a kind of ranger. Or in some instances, if your setting has it, a kind of a wizard or cleric, or barbarian wizards, which is one of the reasons I like 2nd edition, because it made those things tweaks to existing class constructions. It made those things more of an archetype and less of a cliche. And that is, of course, a very fine line that is very difficult not to cross. 3rd edition did a very good job of some things. Do not mistake me. I think it had some really good ideas in it. It really wasn't for me. And that's kind of the situation I am at now and what brings this up. I enjoyed 1st edition Shadowrun. At some point I drifted away from Shadowrun because I guess I thought it was too silly, or just my gaming was mostly other games, and I got rid of it because if I don't play a game at least every couple of years, I usually get rid of the books because somebody else can make use of them more regularly, and I feel that that's a good way to spread gaming love. Now, some games I keep regardless because they're just that vital that even if I don't play every other year, such as Dungeons & Dragons Encyclopedia, or previously I had the colored booklets, the red, teal, black, and gold that I was using until a friend resent me a copy of the Dungeons & Dragons Encyclopedia. But the primary reason I bring this up is there's a new edition of Shadowrun, and again, this is a situation where 1st and 2nd edition were not that different. Third edition went a completely different way with many of the rules instances, and fourth edition changed it even more. But fourth edition and third edition are not as closely related as first and second, and fourth edition is very distinct from third. And now we have a new 5th edition that just came out, which coincides with the release of the Shadowrun Returns video game, which actually harkens back to the 1st edition time period. And the reason this is an issue is I liked 4th, or actually the 20th anniversary edition version of the book, which is like 4.5. It's a slightly revised version of 4th edition. 5th edition is significantly changed. Now, not as much as 2nd to 3rd or 3rd to 4th. It's a very closely related to 4th edition rule set. Most of the systems are still there. They've changed character creation process to make it a little simpler using the old priority system as opposed to the here's a bunch of points. They have streamlined hacking in a way that I'm very happy for, because that is how I had already house ruled hacking, because I felt that a common method of resolving game situations is superior than a bunch of different disparate tools that are all running under different rule sets functionally. But the problem with 5th edition is it implements a change that I'm not happy with, and that is the concept of limits. Now, I'm still reading the book, so they might grow on me, and I might revise my opinion. I will probably mention it here if I do. But in 4th edition, a highly skilled character with a decent innate talent, that is a good attribute, could roll really well even with a significantly poor device. For example, I will use weapons, okay? So let's say you have a cheap handgun, but you are a very skilled and very innately talented individual. You could still make incredible shots and do, decent damage. Now, the rules previously, a better gun would have given you more accuracy, and that would have made you an even better shot, because the accuracy of the gun is improving your innate talent and skill. It's actually assisting you in that. 5th edition has changed that, and that's one of the things that bother me, in that basically 5th edition has said that no, we don't want, forgive the dog, she doesn't know what's going on, we do not want a skilled person being able to get by with just a crappy handgun. We think they should have to spend a lot of money on a good handgun. Now, from what I know of shooting in the past, the better weapon will assist a good shot in making the shot. A bad weapon will kind of penalize them, because it can actually make their shots go too high or too low or side to side. I had a rather poor handgun I inherited, and it didn't work very well. It simply was not a good gun. I later purchased a Colt 45 from a little knockoff company, as well as a Colt Delta Elite 10mm, back when those were more common and not outrageously expensive and hard to get ammo for. And the end result is that, yes, I noticed a difference in the quality of my shots, but it felt less like the gun was penalizing me and more like it was assisting me in doing a good job. Now, with the 5th edition, limits essentially limit how many successes you can get in your roll. So in previous 4th edition and 20th anniversary edition, if I rolled 11 dice and all of those 11 dices are successful, that means I rolled a 5 or 6 on the die. That counts as a hit in the game. I got 11 basically points to award to damage and to overcome any defenses the person has. Now, that is simple. It's a fairly functional way of handling it. Now, the new version of accuracy and the new version of the game has, as I said, these limits. And the limits actually stop you from getting 11 hits. Even if you've got 11 dice and roll all 11 successfully, rolling a lucky streak of all 5s and 6s, which is rare for 11 dice. But let's just say you hit it. My limit now imposes a penalty where I can only use a small number of those hits unless I have optimized my character to make the most use of that attribute or accuracy of the weapon. Meaning I need to have the most expensive gun, or I need to have the highest attribute, depending on which one is covering it, because it depends. Sometimes the gun penalizes your accuracy, and sometimes it's your innate limit. And that means, for example, I may only be able to use 5 hits, basically making a character have to be min-maxed in order to be an efficient shot. Whereas before, I could have made a character who's a reasonably good shot and reasonably good innate talent and a reasonably good pistol and be an effective combatant or hacker or whatever skill test we're doing with the right piece of technology. Now I'm actually unable to do that unless I focus that character, both his gear and his ability scores and skills, on all matching and lining up, which to me creates a problem. I don't mind a character getting a lucky shot or being really skilled and being good with a poor handgun. I would have been fine with a simple fix of saying, you know, all these cheap handguns have a -1 or a -2 or a -3 accuracy, which gets a very similar effect as the limits, effectively eliminating how many successes you can get, but does so in a more elegant manner, and does it basically, and forgive the term because this is not a term I would normally use, basically cock blocking your character. Think about it. You now have a character who's really skilled, who's really innate talent, but because he's using a average weapon, is not going to be as effective as one who has an absolutely wonderful handgun and spent a lot of money on from the get-go. But not because you don't have the skill and talent to compensate for that. No, because the gun is penalizing you in a way that you can't overcome. Forgive me, that is my phone. It's a Thundar ringtone. Anyway, so what do you think? Do you think the 5th edition limits in Shadowrun actually make the game better? Actually balance the game more importantly? I have some other problems with the 5th edition. These are minor things. For example, there are fewer spells for a magic user in the default core game than the 20th anniversary game, which is the one I used last. And that bugs me because that basically means they're going to require me to buy another book to add to the spell repertoire, while I do have multiple 4th edition, 20th anniversary edition books. I bought them because I wanted the books and the information provided, not because it was required. I could still operate a successful long-term game. And now it feels like I'm going to be required just to build certain kinds of characters that I am interested in from previous editions of the game. Anyway, this is about it for me. I'm not saying don't get Shadowrun 5th edition. I'm just trying to get a gauge on other people's opinions on how it works. I'm very frustrated with the fact that limits on magic actually penalizes even you more than the technology. But for now, we'll leave that as it is. Give me some discussion. Talk back. Send me a video. Whatever you like. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.